Hello and welcome. I'm Dean Askin, the communications strategist for Odin. Whether you're working and watching this remotely, or whether you're doing that from your traditional office, thanks for taking the time out of your day to join me for this bird's eye look ahead at the NDEAM campaign we're launching on October 1st. At the end of this webinar, I hope you'll be as jazzed about this year's NDEAM campaign as I am. You've probably already got a sense of that. Now, my head doesn't start spinning backwards or anything like that, but I'm an ENFP, and when I'm passionate about something, well, it kind of just comes across loud and clear. On that note, let's get started with this NDEAM look ahead. Now, you may be familiar with NDEAM, and some of you may not, so I'll take just a minute to explain what NDEAM is all about. National Disability Employment Awareness Month, or NDEAM. This is when it happens every year and what it's all about. As the United Nations has said, access to employment is a basic human right for every person, everywhere. People who have a disability are the world's largest minority group. That's according to the World Health Organization. 15% of the world's population, more than 1.8 billion people, have a disability. But the world's largest minority group is also the most underutilized and unemployed minority group in the world. So raising awareness and keeping the conversation about disability inclusive hiring going is important. And this is what NDEAM does. In Canada, in recent years, there's more and more recognition of NDEAM, but it's actually been around since 1946. It was started in the US following the end of World War II. Now, Odin launched its first NDEAM campaign in 2016. That was before my time, but I can tell you this. This is the third NDEAM campaign I've worked on, and we always work hard to develop a campaign that's dynamic, diversified, and that will draw you in. Whether you're looking at NDEAM from the community services perspective of raising business awareness about disability and employment, or whether you're looking at it from the business perspective. And of course, one of the ways we do that is by using some grabby alliteration like those D's when we're promoting the campaign and talking about it. What's the saying? Every campaign that grabs you needs a theme that grabs you? Well, okay, I made that up for effect. This is our theme for this year. Now, I'll just hold the slide here for a couple of seconds while you try to say that 10 times fast. We've taken this theme and developed a campaign that has several engaging elements and some big firsts again this year. I'll get to all that in a minute or two, but first, a bit about what's behind our engaging talent in the disability inclusion evolution theme. Campaign themes need to resonate with people, but a theme should also be a reflection, and this year's theme is just that. It reflects that in 2021, it's a watershed moment in time when it comes to disability inclusion in business and employment. It's a watershed moment in time for business and employment service providers to connect with each other and converse about disability inclusion. There's more commitment to, action on, and conversation about disability inclusion in business than ever before. The Valuable 500 is powerful evidence of this. Now, in case you're not familiar with it, the Valuable 500 was started at the 2019 World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. It's a global initiative to get the CEOs of 500 national and multinational companies to commit to putting disability inclusion on their business leadership agendas. That goal was reached several months ago, and now the Valuable 500 is in phase 2, developing an action plan. So let me ask you this. Are you following this lead? If you're a business person watching this morning, or whatever time it is where you are you reaching out to local community agencies? And if you're listening in on the community services side, are you connecting more with businesses? When more is done, more happens. A combination of forces is helping to drive that increased awareness, conversation, and commitment. The pandemic has been rapidly changing the nature of work. There are labor shortages. There's technology like AI and VR, and a rapidly changing economy. In turn, this is all creating employment opportunities for job seekers who have a disability that previously there were barriers to. It's all creating opportunities for employment service providers and businesses like those of you watching right now to talk with each other. There have been many stories in the news over the past 18 months about companies finding out their staff are just as, or even more productive, working remotely than pre-pandemic times when seats in chairs at the office was the prescribed norm. Now, granted, not everyone has the flexibility to work remotely, but in evolving work environments where employees can successfully work remotely, accommodations and assistive technologies concerns are kind of a moot point now. That's because all employees are being accommodated one way or another. Technology is being used more to help people be productive and successful. Companies are being more flexible so staff can successfully meet both their work and family obligations and strike a better balance. But here's the other side of the disability inclusion evolution. Although there is growing, evolving awareness of and action on disability inclusion, disability-related inclusion efforts still tend to get left out or left by the wayside when business priorities change in the short term. With all the happening changes that I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, it's important for businesses to not lose sight of disability inclusion in their diversity and inclusion goals. This wouldn't be good for business in the long run. And on the other side of the equation, it's important for everyone who works on the employment service provider side of it to keep reaching out and having conversations with the local businesses in your community. Because every time disability inclusion takes a back seat, it takes longer to keep moving forward. And that's not a win-win for anyone. There's an advertising adage that says people need to hear, read, or see your message 7 times before it sinks in and they act on it. So this is why National Disability Employment Awareness Month remains important and why this year's campaign is so significant. The campaign theme reflects why this is the time to start engaging talent in the disability inclusion evolution. There's a labor shortage in Canada across several sectors. An RBC economics report published in July said this: as shortages grow, so will the urgency for Canada to turn to new and underutilized sources of labor growth. Now, you'll remember at the start of this webinar, I mentioned people who have a disability are the world's most underutilized and unemployed minority group. The RBC report says there's a 3.6% vacancy rate across all sectors, and Canada's labor shortage is going to get worse. The visual on this slide is the cover of a 2018 study by the Business Development Bank of Canada. The title sums up the situation. That study found 39% of small to medium enterprises, which drive our economy, are having trouble finding new workers. And an October 2019 report by the Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters noted 85% of manufacturers are in the same situation. There are roles to be filled, 550,000 job vacancies in the first quarter of this year, according to RBC Economics. There are people to fill roles through disability inclusive hiring. So it really is all about businesses and employment service providers connecting. Then there are all the business benefits. What a great starting point for the conversation with each other. There are a lot of studies and research reports that all say the same thing. Disability inclusive hiring is good for your business. Now, that first green graphic on the left is a stat from a Deloitte report. The other one's from one of the most recent studies by Accenture, a Getting to Equal study done in 2018. Here's what that study found. Businesses practicing inclusive hiring of people who have a disability experience 72% more productivity, a 45% increase in workplace safety, 30% higher profit margins, and 2 times more in net income than other businesses in the study that don't make inclusive hiring business as usual. Earlier this year, Accenture published another Getting to Equal study done in 2020. It found businesses most focused on disability engagement grow their sales 2.9 times faster and their profits 4.1 times faster than other companies. So from a pure business perspective, this year's NDEAM campaign is an action item that makes a lot of business sense. The theme, a National Disability Employment Awareness Month, presents an opportunity for businesses to review their hiring practices, especially the recruiting process, and be introspective about the inclusiveness of their company culture. And if you're an employment service provider, it's an opportunity for continuously educating business owners, hiring managers, and HR professionals about the myths around disability inclusion that are still common and need to be dispelled. It's a good time to start the journey of making disability inclusive talent recruitment and hiring business as usual for everyone involved, because it's a win-win all around. But it's not just about all the bottom line numbers. Other things are important too. Making disability inclusion part of the diversity and inclusion, or D&I, business conversation, and proactively, intentionally recruiting from this talent pool shows leadership in your sector, your organization, and you're setting an example for others to follow. It also drives cultural change within an organization. And this leads to those business benefits I mentioned a couple of slides back. Now, organizations with inclusive cultures are 8 times more likely to achieve better business outcomes. This is a research finding by Deloitte. But again, as Deloitte studies have affirmed, this change doesn't happen unless the CEO is driving D&I. And remember the labor shortage, like those 550,000 vacancies in the first quarter of this year? There are people to fill roles through inclusive hiring. Disability inclusion in business is a process. It's a journey. When you intentionally make the journey, people want to work for you. You can be on the gold or platinum list of professional employment service providers and their clients, job seekers. Top of mind, el primo, numero uno. You can be the first company they contact when they've got a qualified candidate for a role you're looking to fill. And you'll have loyal employees. In some sectors, high staff turnover is a challenging business issue. Well, staff retention rates are 72% higher among people who have a disability. And 86% of employees who have a disability have average to above average attendance records. When it comes to building your brand and customer loyalty, well, among Canadians, 78% are more likely to buy a product or service from a business that hires people who have a disability. And then there's that huge market that's larger than China. So that's the backstory to our 2021 NDEAM campaign theme. In any campaign, you always have to have key messages you want to get across. This was one of our key messages last year. It's one of our key messages again this year. It's the most important key message about disability inclusion in business during NDEAM and 24/7, especially when there's a labor shortage for the foreseeable future. But it's really important to remember one other thing, something that goes along with this. I mentioned it a couple of minutes ago. Businesses should focus on intentional inclusive hiring all the time, not merely during NDEAM. Long-term business success doesn't happen from a one-off, and you can't make the disability inclusion journey successfully without the engineer driving the train, the passengers all on board, with everyone accountable for showing their tickets to the conductor. So now we've come to, what are we doing in this campaign throughout October? Well, I mentioned off the top, it's a diverse, dynamic campaign designed to inspire, inform, motivate, and educate. There'll be a social media component. LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter are our channels. We'll have statistics and interesting factoids about disability and employment. We'll be sharing member success stories. Our 2-part article series will be published on the Odin blog, and there'll be a limited time special. We're making available some of the speaker sessions from our paid Rethinking Disability virtual conference back in the spring. They're informative sessions that are closely tied to the campaign theme, and you'll be able to watch them only until October 31st. There's an interactive element too. Test your knowledge and awareness with our Disability and Inclusion Myths Quiz. We call it our D&I Myths Quiz. We've updated it for 2021. The quiz is something you can do during NDEAM or anytime. Since 2019, we've been doing media outreach during NDEAM, so it's become a regular part of the campaign. And we'll be dropping a new episode of our podcast, You Can't Spell Inclusion Without a D, October 27th. We launched the podcast last October. You can listen to it on Podbean, and there are links to episodes on the Odin website under the News tab. And then there's the big main event of NDEAM, the second annual Light It Up for NDEAM. Last year, it was Ontario-wide, 16 cities and towns, 27 locations. This year, it's nationwide, 10 provinces, 1 territory, 43 cities and towns, 79 locations, and counting. Buildings, bridges, interactive municipal signs, and landmarks across the country are going to be lit purple and blue for one night, Thursday, October 21st. What's that? You've never heard of Light It Up for NDEAM? Well, here's where you can find out all about it. Visit the Odin website to find out all the details and how you can get involved between now and October 21st. So are you ready to participate? By the way, when you download the Leave Behind, that image on the slide, feel free to share it widely with your contacts and in your networks. Other sharing you can do to motivate and inspire during the NDEAM campaign. Hey, share your own weekly posts of interesting, informative facts and statistics related to engaging talent in the disability inclusion evolution on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Join in the theme with us. Promote your own successes related to the theme on those channels and tag Odin. And download and listen to podcast episodes. There are even more things you can do to participate with us if you're an Odin member. Visit the Odin website and spend some time checking out all the resources in the NDEAM PR Kit. It's live now with several resources we've already created, and we'll be adding to it with new material for this year, closer to October 1st. Now, if you're an Odin member watching and listening to this, there are all the resources in the public NDEAM PR Kit, plus there will be some new NDEAM 2021 resources that are just for members. Which brings me to, again this year, there's another close-up view webinar that's exclusively for Odin members. That happens in a couple of weeks on September 14th. It'll be a more detailed look at the campaign and the campaign resources we developed that will be available in the member portal. So if you're watching and you're an Odin member, don't forget to sign up for this members-only webinar happening September 14th. Now, are you jazzed? Are you ready to get involved and participate with us? NDEAM's fast approaching. If you're jazzed, gear up, get ready, and get involved in National Disability Employment Awareness Month and engaging talent in the disability inclusion evolution. These are the hashtags for this year's campaign. Be sure to use them when you're posting your own content and sharing content on social media. Well, that's it for me. Thank you for watching, whatever time of day it is. Thanks again for taking time out of your day for joining me for this look ahead at Odin's 2021 NDEAM campaign. Have a good day.